Welcome to the Ergo2go podcast, brought to you by the Back School and Ability on Demand. I'm your host, Matt Jeffs. We bring you interesting people from the world of ergonomics, on-site injury prevention, risk management, health, safety, well-being, and a whole lot more. Don't forget to subscribe below and click on the little bell in the upper right-hand corner to get the latest on the overlapping fields of ergonomics, health and safety, risk management, human resources, and healthcare, right here on the Ergo2go podcast. Today's guest is a nationally recognized expert in the occupational safety and health fields and the fields of ergonomics. He has instructed over 1,000 workshops and seminars on ergonomics awareness and musculoskeletal disorder prevention to a broad array of healthcare and industrial health and safety professionals. It's my pleasure to welcome to the Ergo2go podcast, director of the Back School for over 25, 35 years. I don't know. Ron Porter. Welcome, Ron. How are you?
Sounds like you're doing my obituary there a little bit. I'm doing great.
It's an elegy.
Good morning. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. And you know, being that you started at the age of 6, I think that's very impressive.
Well, thank you. I was an early learner. I learned very, very early. It was an experience. I needed, because we do deal with ergonomics, and I was only 6 years of age, I needed a jump seat to raise me up to be in the position of being director. So
all right, pal, you've pulled my leg long enough. But
okay,
we do this sort of thing in a past, present, future format. So I think a little origin story is due. And I was wondering if you might share with us your background and, frankly, what drew you into this field of ergonomics?
Well, I was first drawn into the physical therapy field. When I was in high school, I grew up in East Tennessee in Knoxville. It's the University of Tennessee is there. My undergraduate degree was from the University of Tennessee, but when I was growing up, all of the cool boys went out for football, and I wanted to be cool. So at about 130 pounds, I decided that I was going to be a football player. During my sophomore year in high school, I went to practice. They basically used me as a tackling dummy, and I didn't even make it. Didn't even make it all the way to football season. I got injured. They sent me to a physical therapist, and I really didn't know what a physical therapist was at that point. And she looked at me when I was in the treatment area, and she said, "Sweetheart," she says, "are you the kicker?" I said, "No, ma'am." She said, "Well, I believe you're in the wrong sport." She said, "Those big boys are going to kill you." And that may have been one of the best pieces of advice I ever got, but I was really what I learned from that physical therapist, besides the fact that I didn't fit into football, was I was very impressed by what they provided. During college, I worked at a local hospital in the physical therapy department. This was back in the 1970s, when there was generally one physical therapist and a lot of physical therapy aides, or a few physical therapists. And I was impressed by the fact that it was a helping profession, but it also involved physical activity. I've never been someone that wanted to sit at a desk. With technology in the last few years, even those of us in physical therapy, we end up spending too much time dealing with paperwork. But I was very impressed with the opportunity to work with individuals who needed assistance, and also it be one that it kept me physically fit.
How did that ease into ergonomics? I guess that might come to the Back School's origin story, does it? How did these two meet?
After my physical therapy degree is from Emory University here in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And during physical therapy school, I was introduced as one of our instructors to Stanley Paris. Stanley had a series at that time. He was teaching spinal mobilization courses, was his skill, but he also had a few clinics in the Atlanta, Georgia area. After I graduated from school, I took one of his continuing ed classes, and he discussed with me working for the back school, or actually the Atlanta Back Clinic, where we would treat people that were injured in local industry. I came to work there in January of 1981. The back school began in 1979. And so it was an outgrowth of an industrial back clinic where we would go visit some of the facilities that were sending us employees for treatment, trying to ease their return back into work so that they didn't re-injure themselves. And back then we really didn't call it ergonomics. That was where the name of the back school came from. We did back injury prevention. Ergonomics was a word that began being used in the 1990s. OSHA implemented first some guidelines for the meat packing industry for beef and pork. And then during the Clinton administration, they pulled together a fairly detailed ergonomics standard. It was, as I'm sure you're aware, it was implemented at the end of the Clinton administration, and then it was repealed pretty rapidly during the Bush administration. But the word ergonomics stuck. We were already doing continuing ed programs on back injury prevention. But we began, in the early 2000s, we began doing more education specifically aimed at ergonomic skills. And some of the tools that we use actually came from that ergonomic standard. Gave us a little bit more, I guess, legally defensible ergonomic assessment tools that were easy to use. The ones that were, most of the ones that were available prior to that, like the NIOSH lifting equation, was fairly detailed, and it was fairly task specific.
Yeah.
So we, the ergonomics was, basically what ergonomics is or what it should be, is prevention. Which is not anything that was really focused on in my physical therapy curriculum. We were mainly in the 1970s taught to evaluate and treat,
yes,
not to prevent. But we had the skill sets to be able to do that. And as I dealt with patients, first in a clinical setting, I worked in an acute hospital, was my first job out of school. Then I worked for a couple of orthopedists. The hospital actually rented me out as a physical therapist. And I dealt a lot with sports medicine. And I started to realize that, prevention and education was one of the things that really, as a physical therapist, I had to do a lot of. I had to educate and convince individuals that the treatments would be effective, and also that the behavioral modification that was needed would be effective. And essentially what we do at the back school is educate people to modify behaviors and to understand why. And so over the last now 38 years that I've been here, we've grown a business that is primarily focused on education, and behavioral modification. And so, we've been very fortunate to see the medical model begin to move in that direction, finally.
Yes.
As you and I've discussed several times, the medical model in this country is we'll wait till someone's damaged and then we'll throw money at it.
Right.
It's not been very effective.
Right.
And so, the ergonomics aspect of it, or the prevention aspect of it, has finally become more accepted. With the wellness topic, or however you want to fit it in. We, as you know, as an instructor with us, we deal a lot with safety professionals, which is where ergonomics often falls.
Yes.
We deal with human resources, employee benefits. It's ergonomics fits in so many different places.
That's right.
So it's really been a thrill to watch the growth of the new medical model, as you often call it.
Finally catching up with us. Exactly. I think some of us were a little ahead of the curve. It's not backslapping here. It's just the truth. We saw, number one, the joy in our work. When we get to take this skill set and apply it towards the prevention versus the reaction of injury, it's really kind of joyous work. At least that's how it comes across to me. So we've really had a chance to see, well, I guess finally things have gotten so dire financially in the healthcare world that they're finally starting to listen to us. Is that a safe summary?
Well, unfortunately, I guess it is. One of the statements that I frequently make in our where we're training other people to develop ergonomic skills is that in business, ergonomics is often about three things: money, money, and money.
Right.
Ergonomics initially grew out of the human factors area, focusing on productivity. It really wasn't about prevention of injury. It was more about making sure that individuals were provided with the tools to be productive in their jobs. Another aspect that brought me into ergonomics is the fact that I'm left-handed.
Me too.
When I was the story I always tell is about my first grade teacher tying my left hand to the chair, saying it was a sign of the devil to write with your left hand. And then she met the devil. It was my mom. She went over there and she says, "You untie Ronnie's hand," and there was, but all of the desks in the school in the 1950s were designed for right-handed individuals. Those of us that were left-handed were required to cross midline with our arm, which, as you and I both know, is an ergonomic risk factor. So,
and upside down. Yeah,
exactly. They wanted my handwriting to look like a right-handed individual, and it never did. I'm still frustrated by that.
We're both deeply scarred, aren't we?
I was hoping that possibly I could file for some type of government assistance.
You and me both. Oh gosh, the origin story just got deep and a little dark.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, we do this in 3 segments, so if I could trouble you to sit tight for a little bit, want to come back and talk a little bit about what we're doing in the present and finish up on our 3rd segment with a view towards the future. Can you hang out for a little bit?
I would love to. Thank you for the opportunity, Matt.
All right, sit tight and we'll get to the next segment. Folks, you've been listening to and watching the Ergo2go podcast. I'm your host, Matt Jeffs, brought to you by the Back School and Ability on Demand. We bring you interesting people like Ron Porter from the world of ergonomics, on-site injury prevention, health, safety, well-being, and a whole lot more. Don't forget to subscribe below and click on the little bell in the upper right-hand corner to get the latest info from the overlapping fields of ergonomics, health and safety, risk management, human resources, and healthcare right here on the Ergo2go podcast. Until next time, let's be safe, let's be smart, let's be helpful, and let's get to work. See you next time, everybody.